welcome to another episode of the Stand Up.
Let's do it.
Here we are. So I'm going to bring the topic today. I have, of course, consuming lots of content related to AI-driven development and the things that we are experiencing because I'm always on the lookout for new techniques and problems people are having and how to address that type of stuff. And I think that today I wanted to prompt with something that I saw on LinkedIn. I looked at this image, came up in a post, and you know, without kind of thinking about what they were thinking about, I love this idea of, we all know the classic waterfall and agile methodologies here, right? The skateboard to the scooter to the bike to the motorcycle to the car versus build the wheel, then the axle, build the chassis, right? So that there's the classic two methodologies we always had was waterfall and agile. And waterfall is like big upfront design. Agile is we incrementally get to where we want to go. So we ensure that we're building the right product for the users.
Right.
And there are people who will criticize this flow and say that, oh, it really looks more like a go-kart because you needed something like a car. I don't think we need to get into the semantics of the image and dive in. Just you get the point. The point is you don't want to go down a waterfall, build this, and find out this isn't what the user wanted. Has given us a little bit of two new additions to this. One is I love the vibe coding at the bottom. And this is, I think vibe coding increasingly now is a term that's being applied to a non-engineering background who's effectively just using prompts to generate code on something like Replit, and they are not able to read code at all. All they can do is prompt and test and prompt and test, and they hope to somehow get to this product. And I love this image of just like they had the car and then they just kept adding and stuff, and all the parts are attached to the outside and they're in weird places because this is kind of what happens. And it's not necessarily the AI's fault either, because when you're an engineer, you work in such a way that you find a logical flow to put the pieces together so that you end up actually, I think, if you're doing AI-driven development correctly as an engineer, you end up following this agile process, but you're using the agent to kind of move the process along faster for you. Now, there's this other piece. And I've fallen into this trap, and we've fallen into this trap, and clients are falling into this trap. And let's just talk a little bit in Agile, in this world here. When a client asks me, how do you move faster? There's only one way to really move faster, and that's to trim scope. You have to cut features if you want to move faster. You can't just code faster or solve the problem faster. That's a very difficult thing. Now,
or add a body.
Right, or adding a body, we already know. Let's just take that as an axiom, universal truth. Adding a body is not the way to make anything move faster. If anything, it'll move slower. Mythical Man Month has had that right forever, right? Now, let's take this AI version, though. There is a world where you get the spec, and AI is allowing you to move fast, and instead of having these tough conversations with customers, you pull the AI lever because the world has not gotten used to the speed of AI. And you go, you know what? I'm just going to build them the freaking rocket ship. And that's it. And we're going to build them everything that they want. And we're not going to have that conversation of trimming the scope because it's already moving so fast. They're still going to be to market in a month. So what's the difference? The problem is you built the spaceship and then you find out your users just wanted the car. And I thought this image was so funny because anyone who's in the agency world right now, building lots of products for lots of customers, has basically fallen on this amazing crutch that we now have to give the customer their wildest dreams very, very quickly and at quality. So that you got the fast, you get the speed, you get the quality, at least until the world is used to the speed. But you end up kind of building the wrong thing, and you end up building a really nice wrong thing, and then you whittle it back. But then this is where you kind of end up in this weird place because there's all sorts of cruft associated with turning a spaceship into a car and maintainability concerns. So here's the thing that I wanted to meditate on today is this product management skill set. I think we're demanding it, and increasingly it is being demanded of engineers to develop this skill set. Whereas in the past, this was born by like a combo of the product manager and the UX designer. And then it would come to the engineer and they would kind of build each phase, and the product manager and the UX designer would work on kind of figuring out how to build the smallest thing and work with the engineering team. But I do think that increasingly the engineer, now that the code has become so cheap, is sort of tasked with this idea of how do I follow an agile process? How do I build the minimum viable? How do I make these choices and trade-offs in the world where I could like just jump straight to the spaceship?
Well, here's another question. In your AI scenario where I build the spaceship first and I whittle down to what the basic requirement was that the user was really looking for. What you don't see in the image is the trail of tears. We'll call it tech debt. So as you whittle away, like, what is that rocket ship as you're moving towards building your car? What is the trail that you left behind? Like you went in hot, you built the entire thing that the customer wants, and now you just want to whittle it down to the version that the customer needs. And so I wonder if we're running into a world of just absolute bloat, code bases that are just fraught with tech debt. And like, what is the downstream impact of trying to find the right product if you come in with the big macro thing already built and have to reduce from there?
And the thing is, I don't even think about the tech debt under the hood so much, because I'm assuming a world where AI is actually going to be able to really help us clean up code in like a way that we
Sure.
could not do before. What about just UX bloat and feature bloat? Like like we recently built a product, and here's the thing about agencies. You say the customer. The customer is so frequently not the user, but they're convinced that they are. And how do you deal with that? The customer that comes to us because they have an idea, they're building for this user base that they know very well and they have a very good handle on. But ultimately, as with anything, and I'm going to use our tool Fin, we're dogfooding with the team right now. We built Fin as our project management solution, right? Combining finance, combining project management, you, me, another engineer. All of our engineers just got in it. And what does the Slack channel look like? Blowing up with all the different UX paths that people are working in that we now have to reconcile. And we're quite literally the users of this. So no matter how well you think you know this user cohort, you don't know it. And things are going to come up. And the longer you take to get to market, the longer you take to show things to real users, that's the tenet of Agile, the further from the goal you can end up. It's just now we're in this world where code is cheap and code is fast, and you can get to something like a spaceship really fast, and then like quite literally build the wrong spaceship. That problem didn't go away.
What I find really interesting is you're definitely focusing on where is the real premium of skill now. Like if the playing field is level where like I just have to be a good prompt engineer, and like I can build this big ass spaceship based on this really, really robust prompt or really big requirements documentation. Where is the premium skill? Is it in taking that to the customer, to the end user, to your beta round, and taking feedback in at rapid pace? Is it, the architecture of systems outside of the product that you built? So like thinking more enterprise level solutions and trying to stitch together other types of use cases to your product. Like where is the premium skill today? Because the premium skill of yesterday, we talk about this about, that unicorn as an engineer, call it the forward deploy engineer. It's the mix of your customer acumen, maybe your sales acumen, your ability to have a design focused, so you don't necessarily need intervention from a designer specifically, and your ability to be full stack as an engineer. If all of that is being taken care of right now by AI, where is the premium of skill now?
Well, you named a lot of roles, and this is the thing. Humans still use software. I don't think AI has a very good handle on what it means to be a human user of the software. I think it's doing a lot based on patterns, and a lot of times it just does too much because it says, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice to have all these things?" And as an engineer, you say, "Oh yeah, as long as it's cheap for you to do that, sure, add an export button." But the problem that you didn't think of is now that you added an export feature, you now need to support it if users actually like it. And you may not be prepared for that. Or if it doesn't work in the way people want, or it becomes a distraction, there's all these other things that you have to consider. And I still think human computer interaction, you need to be a human to understand the field of HCI, which is really what we're talking about. And I wanted to bring up another article here. So I watched this video this morning with Theo, T3.GG. So we'll share this in the show notes. But what happens now? And in it, he references this article, Code is cheap now, software isn't. And I love this concept. Code is cheap now, software
Love
isn't.
that.
Because this is exactly the problem we are talking about. The generation of the code is getting better, it's getting faster, and it will continue to get better. But the building the right thing at the right time is one piece. I want to pivot us just a little bit also to distribution, because now even if you're great at UX and product, let's just say we work with our team, we build the exact right thing. One of the things Theo talks about in his video is how hard it was to become a YouTuber and to like actually get good at the marketing piece, and how he never thought he would get good at it. And I actually kind of feel the same way, which is I think a bit of why we're doing this channel every day, because we're actually iterating on this as a product while we're doing it. So I think about that too, of the distribution problem is
It's the hardest part.
incredibly difficult
Hardest part.
because I still think people want to buy software. Like, I don't think that CEOs want to go on Lovable any more than they want to go on Squarespace and build their own website. What they want is SaaS to be more affordable, which I think will happen. The pricing on SaaS is going to go down according to the effort it takes to build it. That's just normal supply and demand. But it's still cheaper for me to pay $5 a month for a piece of software and not ever have had to go into Lovable.
You know, I find that this line, code is cheap, software isn't, is actually pretty expressive of what I was saying a second ago, which is, where is the premium? You know, the premium is in building a piece of software that keeps people safe, that allows your user to solve a problem, that is sellable. Like, we don't discount the difficulty of putting a piece of software in the world and selling that thing. Marketing and sales is actually the hardest part of this entire equation. Anybody can build anything, but selling it is actually the hard part. What I find interesting right now is the title for me is like spot on. I'm trying to piece together, like, where is the premium of skill? The premium of skill is building usable, valuable software, not just producing large blocks of code that may end up with a thing that somebody can use. You know, one of the hard parts still is getting something from, let's call it a replet, to production, and then maintaining it into the future, and taking user feedback and providing enhancements and yada, 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 making sure that you're not vulnerable, making sure that you have security patch, like all of the things that really an engineer is required to do to birth actual valuable software into the world. This is not really about, can something be built? It's is something that was built valuable and safe to use. And so for me, that kind of answers the, where is the premium that you're thinking about right now? Where's the differentiator? If AI is moving so fast and you can do so much with it, what's the real value of the software engineer today? It really is in bringing products to market that are sellable, that are marketable, that have businesses attached to them. You know, it's one thing to build a piece of software. It's another thing to run a tech company. And so I think that we as an agency lay the foundation of building a future of a tech company, or building a valuable business tool that may not be for end users. It may be just something internal, but these are the things, are building the right thing Just because you have AI at your fingertips doesn't mean it's building the right thing.
And AI can't, that's the other thing it can't do. So like if we set up a board that Claude just read from of all the things people wanted, Claude would kind of gladly just do all of them. And if it would find ways to put it all together. And at the end, you'll end up with this old thing right here.
Yeah.
Like it'll just end up like that. You'll just, because Claude will just do, that is one, my one critique of Claude is unless I really ask it a question, like it pretty much won't ever tell me my ideas are bad. Like that's always the funny thing about AI. Oh, what a great idea. So that still requires care. So software requires a bunch of things beyond just the build. It requires distribution, it requires UX and product thought, and it requires distribution to the right people, both of which we help folks with, which I think are going up in value. The other thing I wanted to bring up, though, that I don't know if you've noticed for at least the last 6 months or so, I have not heard a single lead or sale even consider offshore development, period, full stop, at all, ever again. Like we used to hear about that all the time. Oh, we were looking at offshore, nearshore. And I feel like that entire market has just collapsed.
I don't know if that's true or not true. What I do think is that the playing field is level. The expectation of prospective customers is that AI is going to be used to provide acceleration and maybe even more accuracy. That has been something I've noticed, which is people are aware that their money gets them further. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Like their
I
money
think
can get them further. And that
what
was
you're getting at is
that was the whole value proposition of going offshore, is that my money would get me further because I have a lower cost of talent. And so the money that I have distributed over maybe a team, but then we know that just putting a team on a problem doesn't necessarily move faster. It just gives more brains to problem solving. But now, do I need more brains if I have AI as the assistant
well,
for
the
problem
problem
solving?
you're describing, it's not even that. Whenever we ever sold against offshore providers, or people came to us and they said, I offshored and now I'm upset, is they had to provide absolutely perfect specs to the offshore team because they did not have any concept of business analyst. They did not have a concept of a product person that could understand the product in the market and the UX that they were trying to. So that was one of the biggest things. And some of that I think could be cultural shift. Like some of that is, hey, you remember we were trying to build something. Remember we built an app for a tattoo removal shop. And I remember the developer that was on it was trying to understand how to build this like tattoo removal app. And at one point they said, what is tattoo removal and why would
Yeah, no
anyone do it?
concept of it.
Had zero concept. It just wasn't a thing to them. They could not conceive of how, and so it was very clear they didn't get, like when we were talking about this is coming from the laser, right? The laser has to transmit data here. They were like, a laser? What are you even talking about? And we took for granted, myself included, that when the client was just talking to me, I understood everything perfectly. I did not think I needed to explain in dictionary definition everything like that. And we were able to come up with the solution. We ended up doing it, but this is, I think, the primary problem and why there's a collapse in offshoring. I'm pretty confident this is happening right now because the part that people need is the translation of their loose dreams into software. That the piece of like the writing the code once you have the spec, that's cheap now. That wasn't always cheap. People wanted to try and get that at $7 an hour. Now you're getting it in the form of tokens. And you can't say that the code coming out of most offshore shops was just this incredible, beautiful code. That was not the case either then. So now the piece that they were offering is no longer the offering. And there's this shift back to, I need someone who's going to understand my problem and be able to translate this vision into viable technology and help me distribute it so that it can actually get real users in the real world.
And so that brings me back again to where I was saying is, where is the premium? The premium is really understanding the business problem. And not for nothing, you and I have definitely turned away our fair share of leads where we just don't understand the business problem.
I do that all the time.
And
I'm
that
not
just
the
means
right person.
I'm not the right person. I'm not the right shop if I can't get behind it. If I fundamentally don't understand the problem that you're trying to solve, or your vision about how you're going to bring it to market, I respectfully decline. Thanks for the opportunity. But I do think, as we think about where is the premium, it's probably going to be the title of this episode. Like, where is the premium today? The premium is really the ability to understand and digest the problem and think about how you're going to create the solution. The tool of whether you do this manually, whether you use AI, whether you assign a team to it, like whatever your tool is of today, that's up to the choice of the individual that you trust with your idea. The idea of creating something with low code or no code is not new. It's, a decade
Well,
or
that's been
more.
around since Dreamweaver.
Yeah, decade or more.
We've been
All of
trying
this
to
stuff
do that.
exists. And then what about the good old days of, just trying to build a landing page to just test whether people even want your stuff or not? There's lots of different ways. Forget the tools about bringing your product to market. It's when you entrust someone with your idea. Do they fundamentally understand it? And do they see your vision clearer even than you do? And so that comes with experience. That comes with, building the right things, not necessarily the wish list, but building the right things for customers. Sometimes they don't really even know what they want. They have this big dream, this big wish list, but how do we build the right thing for them from experience that users are going to really need? How do you build the right thing at the right time? How do you release the right thing at the right time? And so that's really the science that you're asking that team to produce. And when you start talking about a wage war, you start talking about the lowest bidder, that's at the sacrifice of experience. Like your cost per hour is directly associated to your experience. I don't care where you live in the world. If you're extremely talented, your rate reflects that. And so that I think is where does premium lie, is the ability to understand a non-technical individual's vision and translate that into a product. How that happens, how the sausage is made in the middle, is up to you, or is up to the engineer, or is up to the agency that wins that deal. And so I find that we're in a very interesting position right now because, yeah, you could build whatever rocket ship you want, but is that rocket ship the right thing? Did you need an airplane instead? Did you need a race car? Did you need a skateboard?
Well, there's an art to that. You already know. Convincing clients to build a little bit less is often very difficult. That even prior to this, when you're trying to actively save them time and budget, there's just sometimes a very hardened belief. And again, I come back to this is increasingly falling on engineers to act as business analysts. And so I had someone message me in LinkedIn. They were like, "Hey, I'm a front end engineer. Help me. I need, what do I do?" They wanted me to give them the answer. What do I do to get better? And I said, well,
Save my job.
it was honestly a question like that, and I thought about it, and the first thing is going back to what we were talking about a few episodes ago is I don't know what the path looks like today. I know what the path looked like when I started and what worked for me. I could pull some themes out of that, but I don't know what the path looks like going forward. So pulling themes out of that is one, I think you should become full stack. I think specialization never really worked for me. I always kept broadening. So I did have a very specialized role. I was like a front end design developer. I was very on the HTML, CSS side. And then I tell people React came out and I had to grow out of that, which then brought me to back end, but it also brought me in the field of design. And I read far and wide and really broadened my skill set across all of these things, which is paying a dividend today. But for a good long time, there was this, you'd talk to a recruiter and they're like, you need to change your title to front end because people aren't looking for full stack anymore. They'd be like, we're not looking for full stack. We're not looking for front end anymore. We want full stack. And you try and cater the resume to that. And you got to go, this is a back end job, change everything to back end. I kept learning broad because I just am interested in this stuff and I just like computers and that's it. I just enjoy working with the technology. So I think about that. That would be my first suggestion to somebody in that suggestion is in that situation. Broaden the horizon.
How do you teach that? Like you can't, you're either passionate about this or it's just a job.
Well, that's kind of the all right. So I'm going to share another screen because you're leading me right into another thing I wanted to share, and I was like, it's not really fitting. But right, people who are truly passionate about this, it's really not about the time, the money. You really just find yourself wanting to learn more. And the thing that's kind of interesting now is, okay, the code part's a little bit taken care of. Learn architecture patterns, right? Like all those architecture patterns, you're thinking like the old Gang of Four book, the old designing data intensive applications. These things are even more relevant now because you really do need to master the broad concepts and learn about how truly inspired products were built and designed, because this is really going to be your role going forward. So I would really encourage folks to think about that. Now, this is very easy for you and I will recognize that because growing up in the United States, we are exposed to the mythology of these product titans. And I remember what it felt like to open the fucking iPod on Christmas.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't remember that. I got the Sony Rio. My cousin got the iPod. I remember what it was like to see I thought that was cool. And then I saw the iPod and I went, oh my God. Like I remember the moment that I was like, my MP3 player, so amazing. And then I saw that one and I go, oh my God, the click wheel. But it wasn't that I wasn't like, upset or anything. I remember I was like, holy, who thought of this? And you grow up with that. And so there is an aspect of this does become easier when you grow up around these products and experiencing them and being at the forefront of that. And I think that is your edge. So if you're out there kind of on the market, I think in the United States especially, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of the layoffs I think are related to kind of looking for salary reductions across domestic employees. And one of these big advantages you have is your product acumen that is actually, I guarantee you have more of this than you realize just from growing up with the popular products of our day, remembering, I think back, I remember the first time I held an N64 coming from like the original Nintendo and then the Sony PlayStation remote, which is, like just if you've been a student of that type of stuff and have been a user, try and think back to the things that made those products great and you have learned more than you know. And then the other side of this is we talk about passion. I want to just share one more person's. Let me share my screen one more time here because I think that this is really cool also because this just shows you, Pat. And I've often talked about this so many times. This is Peter Steinberger. This person has had a $100 million exit. Just so you know, they're done. They're set. They don't have to build anything ever again. And Mitchell Hashimoto, another person, Peter, though, has recently written an article about how he uses Claude Code, and I thought it was so cool because it is very similar to or he's using Codex now, but he showed his vibe coding setup, and it's very similar to what I do, which is I do have multiple things going, but I don't like explode with it. I'm not, I'm very in the CLI tools, but look at these current projects, dude. Look at this. Look at this
Crazy
list.
list.
Look at the legacy work. Look at his commit history. This is somebody who's independently wealthy, does not need to code anymore at all.
But that's what passion looks like. It's a non-stop interest in creating.
So this is kind of what I would encourage people in general is right. If you're passionate about computers and programming, there's never been a better time because you would never be able to create this. Before I'd have a notebook of ideas and it just grew and grew and grew. And one day I would say, maybe someday when we exit this company, I'll get to build one of these things. You could build all of the things and then figure out which one you like. And some of them may be silly, someone may be awesome. And anyway, I thought that this was really impressive because they are actively using agents. They were one of the first people that came forward and said, hey, I'm not reviewing all the code. They're like, they look at the code, they know how to read code, they're a very good programmer, but they're like, hey, it's moving faster than I'm able to review it, and I'm building, and they're prompting, and they are showing us the future of what this looks like. But just kind of speaking to that point of passion, dude, if that's not you, that's okay. I don't want to say that that's wrong, but you have to expect that in a world where we are seeing this vacuum, this constraint, if you really were a programmer that did not enjoy this, it's time to maybe think about something else. I'm going to go ahead and say that. That may be controversial. There was a period of time when I came up in this that there was so much demand for programmers, you didn't need to be particularly good to work and make a good living at this. That is changing.
Cushy. It was cushy. You could just hide at a company for a decade.
Yes. And so not only do I think the skill set is pivoting towards people are like, it's more senior. Senior people are just better at product level work by nature of being exposed to it more. And junior people are not, because you're spending a lot of brain power learning to code and learning all this new tech, learning how things work under the hood takes brain power. You haven't gotten there yet. That's a different dichotomy. I don't think juniors are out of work forever. But what I think you're getting away from is, oh, I went to a 6-month boot camp. I kind of didn't like this, but they're willing to pay me 90 grand a year, and I was making 30 as a barista before. I'm going to go do this. And then you get sucked into it. Now, admittedly, I kind of got into this that way. I just got offered a gig, and they were just willing to pay me very little money to learn. But then gradually I fell in love with it. So that could be you. But I think if you don't feel that love, and if you're not pursuing that mastery and getting better at it, this is going to be a very weird, it's going to be a very weird time for those folks. I think that those folks are going to have a very hard time. And then alternatively, if your love was truly authoring the code, which there's that contingent too, this is also going to be a tough time, because writing the code by hand is falling a little bit out of style, I think, in terms of shipping the real product. It's really becoming a necessary piece. I still hand code every day. You already know this. I say you got to stay sharp. Don't let your brain atrophy. But I think in terms of like, hey, dollars and cents, these features need to ship and we need to ship them quickly, that's also changing. So we'll see where this ends up, though. This could change. All this could change next week.
Totally.
Like if Claude went out for a week, all that would be left were the people who know how to hand code for a while. So, but man, sharpen those product skills, because that's becoming the thing. That's the differentiator.
We covered a whole bunch of things in this episode. I think that the real thing here is build the right thing, including yourself. Build yourself with a realistic approach in the modern market, and build the products that come your way with a realistic approach to the modern market. And so this is a lot of art, not a lot of science these days. I think we came out of the era where it was a lot of science. You needed somebody that really had a nice head on their shoulders that could really think about this. Now you have a lot of art. So how do you use the tools of convenience? If you think about software and its nature, the nature of software is to provide convenience. You were talking about these the legacy behemoths of our time, but I just think simplicity. What about the first time you used a piece of software that just made a problem easy? And so that's really the purpose of software, is to provide conveniences. And so I think we have to think about all of our roles and how we participate in this new age. You have to think about where your passions exist. And I think it's a good time to reflect about how one fits into the world, how our business fits into the world. And you and me are trying to figure out how to be as adaptable as possible and stay ahead of this curve and provide as much value to the people that come our way. And we covered a lot of topics on this episode, but I think that'll do it.
I mean, that's the stand-up, dude. Bounced around a little bit.
That's it. That's how it goes. See you tomorrow.